Hey guys, this is part of the Is It Good series where I will take competitive players and we will look at their builds to see if they are good builds, builds that you should try playing in your own games, or if they are builds that are specifically only for competitive games. In this series, we'll be breaking down these competitive players and the play styles and builds they brought to these games that I will focus primarily on tournaments that have prized money so that you know that people are taking it serious. This was during the grand finals part of these games, and this particular map, there are two people I'd like to highlight, so we'll probably see this map twice, but I want to focus primarily on Aullora's Ragnaros to start off, and we will break it down into the playstyle first, followed up by going into the build and everything else. The early game playstyle, we need to remember two things with Aullora versus Liam. Aullora is on high ping, so she is essentially 200 ping. We won't focus too much on the mechanics, but not just that, she's playing against the best solo laner in North America. So the fact that she plays well enough for me to highlight her in this game should explain a little bit on, or at least should prepare you a little bit for what we're about to see. So Liam is playing a very mean Leoric. This is a skill matchup, which means that Ragnaros and Leoric have the chance to win this matchup. It comes down to who plays it better in the one-on-one, but some of the reasons why I'm going to be highlighting Aullora is what she does later in this game. And we'll be seeing that later in this game. But yeah. So starting off, she takes Sulfurous Hungers, which is very difficult to stack against good solo laners because they are going to be constantly harassing you every time that you're trying to get a kill with your Q. And the goal of this talent is to kill 30 minions, and it needs to be the last hit with your Q in order to get the stack for this talent. She gets heavily out of position in this situation. I think she was still just trying to get those stacks, and she's going to die for those stacks. But with that being said, I mean, she might live here. No, there's no way she lives here. This is crazy. So she died to get one stack. That is not something that you want to be doing. So this is an aggressive play style that she needs to adapt to and adjust. So one of the ways that you can get pretty decent stacks on Ragnaros, I've talked about it before, but it's something that Aullora is doing. Use your E, your W, and then your Q on a wave, and you'll likely do enough damage to kill the backline to at least get 3 stacks off of each wave. But ultimately, you kind of want to let like the backline or the front line get low, hit it with a Q, and then you want to, or the front line get low, hit it with a Q, and then use all of your abilities to kill off the backline. Once again, she goes for this aggressive play to try to get a couple stacks. She runs back in, gets another stack. Now, each stack is going to increase the damage that your Q does, and it's also going to increase the amount of healing that you do, because remember, you are healing for 20% of the damage dealt, as well as that healing is doubled versus heroes. So, if you can increase your damage by 30, and then the additional 90, that's 120 extra damage, which against enemy heroes is 50 extra healing. I mean, caster math, it's different than that. I'm actually getting a little tired. 120, and then 20% of that is, what is that, 22, and then 40, so yeah, 44, so that's close enough. But yeah, she then takes a talent called Catching Fire. This talent is extremely powerful, and I'm really surprised how many people are not taking it anymore. Don't get me wrong, I was on the slow burn train for a long time, and I'm still on the slow burn train because that slow is huge, and it's great because it leads up into doing a ton of damage to Living Meteor. But I think people forget that this adds up to 18.75 healing per second flat that you don't need anyone helping you with. It's just flat healing per second. Then you add in the extra healing from Sulfurous Hunger, and you feel like an actual bruiser. And then if you're ever worried about burst, you pop this, you get 25% armor, and you feel like a tank. So that's one of the things that is really missing that I see way too often, is that a lot of people are undervaluing that talent. She then focuses on just covering again, like she did on Lunara. She covers a lot of what her team's not doing. She covers the soak, she covers the camp, she covers the objective, while her team is focusing on going for siege damage or really anything else. This is a very aggressive point where they're sitting on this, and it's setting up a really, really bad fight if Leon were to land that Subdue. Subdue would have been an 80% slow on everyone, followed up by that Samurai approaching and maybe going for a cleave. We see her getting really close to finishing Sulfurous Hunger and also close to finishing Catching Fire. And we can just watch her regen for a second. If we were to look at Leoric's regen, he has 7 health per second. Ragnaros has 17.15, and that's going to get higher as she gets more globes. And that's a huge difference. We can look at a lot of different heroes, actually, and the regen will blow your mind. I mean, Greymane, 5 health per second, and we're at 18 health per second on Ragnaros. It's essentially like, once you have this all the way upgraded at that 15, you almost have like a mini version of a Malfurion's regrowth on you at all times. We do have a little bit of a disconnect here, and then a pause and back. So, and then that should be the Sulfurous Hunger finishing right there. Now, that's probably not going to lead to beating a Leoric, especially since she keeps getting hit by every hand. You need to make sure that whenever Leoric's going to land a Q, you need to juke to the side so you can try to dodge a hand, and be very careful about taking these long fights like this, because it's likely just going to lead to your death. So again, playing against the #1 player in North America is going to be a challenge, but that doesn't mean that she didn't do things that were still very impressive. Because remember that Ragnaros isn't necessarily supposed to always win in the solo lane, right? Ragnaros is there because you bring a lot of utility with things like Lava Wave and Molten Core. And if you guys are unfamiliar with Ragnaros, then I'm going to talk a little bit about what these do. So, if you're very new to Ragnaros, there are a bunch of guides for that. Lava Wave, it will send a giant wave that will not only kill all of the minions, it will collect the experience, but it also does a lot of damage over time. And this extra damage is great to kind of disrupt fights, but primarily the use of Lava Wave is to get soak that your team might not be getting, or to apply pressure. For example, this Lava Wave is applying pressure that's going to lead to their team getting a fort. That fort will passively increase the experience of their team by 20%, which means that if we are to look at the passive experience gained this game, both teams have gotten 10,000 passive experience, but now every tick of passive experience is going to be 20% higher for red team because of that Lava Wave right there. I mean, naturally because they did more damage to it and then the Lava Wave, but you get the idea. So that's the primary use of Lava Wave. There's a secondary use of Lava Wave, which is using it during team fights to either do one of two things: to DPS targets that might be split, or DPS targets that might be CC'd, or to split up teams, because a lot of teams will split up right as they see a Lava Wave in the wave, and then suddenly you can pick them down one by one. There are some extra little benefits to it, which is if you're sieging a structure and you Lava Wave that structure, then suddenly all the enemies run away, you get free siege. You can use it defensively as well, and this is her getting a little bit caught out of position. The ult, I believe... Oh, there was a silence. Oh no, he didn't even have his ult on. So she gets taken out of position there. Honestly, pretty much just a mistake. Her team was all down at bot, clearing up some stuff, and she just simply made a mistake. She goes... immediately spawns, sends out a Lava Wave to push out top lane this time. As Deathwing is getting approached down at bottom lane, she's going to do whatever she can up at top lane so that they can get level 13s. We can continue talking about the build a little bit. She takes Hand of Ragnaros. This reduces the cooldown if she hits at least 2 people by 2 seconds. Reducing the cooldown of a 4-second ability by 2 seconds is effectively doubling your damage. And at the same time, it gives you back a little bit of mana. When this only takes 25 mana, now it only takes 15. Makes it to where it essentially doesn't take a major portion of your mana at all. Like, you could spam Q and regen your mana faster than you need to worry about it. This means that if you can catch 2 people, or if you're playing against a team that has like a frontline and a bruiser, you're pretty safe to have a high damage Q that's going to be healing you quite a bit. At level 13, a lot of people in Q build will take Cauterizing Wounds. In this case, well, this is a rough fight. Amazing silence, amazing entomb, sets up an amazing fight for the enemy team, and this is not looking so good right now. But that's okay. We're going to be looking at Resilient Flame here, and what she takes is when Ragnaros is stunned, he gains 40 armor, and it has a 15-second cooldown. If we look at the enemy team, the only thing that's actually going to be stunning is this shield. But this shield is stunned a couple times that have led to her death. So if it starts getting or stunning her even more, now she has a higher chance of surviving it, and that does get important in the later levels. But Cauterized Wound is what's usually picked up at this tier when it goes Q build, when any Ragnaros goes Q build anyways. And there are pros and cons of this. The con is that this is healing over time. It sucks against Burst, but it's amazing against slow damage teams like a Lunara or a Gul'dan. It's great against that, but it's really bad against like a Li Ming that's going to be doing high burst damage and getting those resets. So with Catching Fire being completed, now she has an activatable that's going to give her 25 armor, and she also has Resilient Flame that could possibly give 40 armor. She has 26 healing per second, which is an incredible amount of healing per second. And now it's both teams approaching level 16, as this game is going to be approaching a closeout. And with level 16s going 12-1, this is a great time for blue team to try to close out this game, or at least take some structures. And this is where you're going to see Molten Core and the value of Molten Core. So what Molten Core does is it allows you to channel on an allied fort or keep, or a destroyed enemy fort or keep. You can channel, you take it over, and you get 3 abilities in Molten Core. One of your abilities is a swipe that will stun everyone that's nearby, which is very important. One is the meteors that just drop down there, which you get to aim in any direction. And those meteors also slow. And then the last one is this big AoE that does a huge amount of damage. During this time that she is able to stall with a Molten Core, we have Deathwing, who's just taking the top. And since Deathwing's taking the top, that essentially turns what was a really bad fight into a trade. So Molten Core is able to stall long enough for Deathwing to take their keep. So Molten Core stalled against 4 as a 1v4, was able to hold off long enough for someone to still grab a keep. At this level, Lava Wave hits everyone on this team as a defensive tool that allows them to quickly deal enough damage to scare them off. And that would have actually been game. As casters, when myself and Baja were watching this, we realized that that would have been the end of not only the game, but the entire series by landing that one Lava Wave on that team that was trying to push in, doing enough damage to scare off 2 members of their team and kill 1 member, making it to where they could not end that game. There's one more moment in this game that's very similar to that, where, remember, this is 17 kills to 2. And of those 2 kills, Ragnaros is one of them. And it was the kill that literally stopped them from losing this game. The next thing that they're going to be doing, they do have that keep, which means that they will be summoning those catapults at all times, and they will be using the Ragnaros to take out this camp, and it takes seconds. That's the cool part about Ragnaros, is he does camps very quickly as the game starts getting further along, especially in Q build. Let's talk a little bit about this level 16 talent. This 16 talent is called Giant Scorcher. Giant Scorcher does 9% of maximum health when you land your Q on a target. And remember that your Q is AoE, so you'll be doing 9% to everyone that you hit. And if you land your Q on 2 frontliners, it's going to have a 2-second cooldown, meaning that you're effectively doing 3% of 2 people's max health per second on top of the extra damage that you're doing. It's a huge increase in damage, especially against frontliners. Arguably, this damage is higher percent health damage than Malthael. So when people say Malthael is the best tank killer, not after level 16. You have to fight essentially this huge amount of percent health. But look at how fast these camps are done on Ragnaros. So don't ever... If you ever have that time where you're walking past a camp on Ragnaros, you can always do that. Now, the enemy team, blue team, they're pretty smart about this. They're waiting until level 20. So this is where Ragnaros is going to do a quick lava wave to cover the soak up at top lane, go for the extra camps that are down in bot lane, because they won't need to worry about top lane for a little while. And then they're going to focus on staying grouped down at bottom lane to try to play as safe as possible. A bunch of people start showing up down at bot lane despite that lava wave up there. So they just reposition, and that's level 20s. With 17 to 2 kills and level 20s versus none with an open keep, this is a great time for blue team to try to end the game. But will they be able to end the game is the real question. And so first thing that they should try to do is look for an ambush. A great interrupt by Lucio was able to keep the Joanna pretty far away. Now, look at this. So, remember what I said before. The first thing that happened is that she grabbed this fountain. Now, the first pull-in from the Joanna triggered the armor, so this second one doesn't actually trigger the armor. She's able to reposition away, got away from the Silence and Tomb, and also got around the ultimate ability, the Stay While and Listen from the Deckard Cain. Then hits the Deckard Cain with a Q to gain a little bit of life, do that percent health damage, then repositioned. Got away, and max range hit Molten Core. While the tank was too far away, while the Silence Arrow was already used, and while the Interrupt was already used by the Deckard. Molten Core goes off, and remember how important I said that stun on the Q was. This stun hits, and is going to immediately lock down these two targets, and it's going to be doing a lot of damage as well. All his damage goes in onto Liam. Liam gets dropped. Then the next set of damage goes out to make sure that Liam takes that. She walks away from the fight, still with 40% life, and preventing a second game end by the enemy team by quickly doing a good amount of damage, taking out the enemy's bruiser, and holding off that level 20 push. And now that her team will be able to get level 20, this is a time where they might have the opportunity to come back into this game. They don't have a healer, but they have a bunch of catapults pushing up top, and they could possibly chase down the enemies a little bit. So their team chases just a little bit too far, gets caught. She repositions to be a little bit safer, gets level 20, and then she picks up Heroic Difficulty. Heroic Difficulty makes it to where your Molten Core has 25% increased health, which is also going to increase the duration because it's scaled. I'm pretty sure about that. No, it does not, because it just. And here's where another game-ending push triggers, and we have another Lava Wave go out. But yeah, this doesn't increase the duration, it just lowers the cooldown, and it increases the health. Lava Wave goes out, does half of Kagiri's health, 40% of Tatsuki's health. Then her Q is doing a huge portion of both Lake Fu's health and Leon Black's health, and now Vespertine's health, which is Liam. And she charges in. She's going to hit with another Q, which then hit Lake Fu and the Leon Black again, which lowers the cooldown, does another 9%, and once again, a huge percentage. And that did so much damage throughout that entire fight, gained all of her life back. She stopped 3 game-ending pushes as Ragnaros, with lava waves, with molten cores, with more lava waves, and just with pure damage. If we go to the hero damage, when she's been essentially away from fights this entire game, 50,000 hero damage, 158,000 siege damage. So play safe in the early game. As you reach the mid game, do what you can with the lava wave to keep your team in the game. When you hit level 16, abuse the low cooldowns of your Q and the high potential damage to the front line, and then utilize your molten core to prevent game ends. Utilize your lava waves to prevent game ends. Those are the playstyles that I would recommend on Aullora. Is it good? I think Aulora's early game could use some work. There were a few deaths that she had that were very unnecessary, which gave the enemies a lead. But this is a really cool build, and it does work out really well. So let's go over the build one more time. That is Sulfurious Hunger to increase the damage and healing of your Q. That is Catching Fire to increase your health regen and reduce the burst damage of the enemy team. That is Hand of Ragnaros, which will essentially double the damage of your Q, assuming that you're hitting 2 people, which she was almost the entire time because Lake Fu's aggressive positioning, as well as Leoric and Leon Black's Joanna. Followed by Lava Wave, which covered all of the soak that their team was missing, allowed them to get an experience lead as far as passive experience goes, which is probably the only reason they stayed in the game to begin with. Resilient Flame gave that extra survivability if she got CC'd before she could pop the catching fire, and then Giant Scorcher allowed her to destroy the enemy front line, followed up with heroic difficulty, which we didn't see the value of this particular game, but it is a talent that can be very, very valuable. Is her build good? I think so. I think yes, it is. Is the playstyle good? I think it's something that everyone can learn from, and I do think it is good. Thank you guys so much for watching, and feel free to check out my other videos, especially the ones in the Is It Good series.